people, nothing hidden, nothing fake. Real conversation, real redemption, testimonies of grace. Real stories, real people, faith that carried them through. When God turns a life around, He can make a way for you. Every story has a purpose, every voice can speak the truth. Real stories, real people, and God is not done with you.
Hey, good evening. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Real Story, Real People. Hey, I'm your host, Raymond Matthews. Tonight we have a special story, a story that can relate to someone out there. Don't forget to share, tag, and like as we bring you an amazing story. God's grace changed everything. God's grace change everything. Hashtag call someone. Tell them God's grace changed everything. Episode 3 is about to go down on real stories, real people. So we're going to bring our story up tonight. We're going to let her introduce herself, jump right on into it. We like to get you know because we know you've been waiting. So we're going to bring Kristen on up and let her introduce herself to each and every one of you.
Hello, Mr. Matthews. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be on your podcast, Real Stories, Real People. My name is Christian, and I just wanted to just come on and just talk a little bit about my story, my life, um, and how God's grace just like is so amazing. Um, I was born into like a family of very good people. My mom was a social worker for many years. My dad was Air Force. He was Army Air Force. And then I grew up in the church. My home church was Zion Hope. And I was just a normal kid. I was pretty much my grandma's baby. As a little girl, I was taken to the church. Everywhere my grandmother went, she took me. She would just like try to instill in me just love and just to be a good soul, good girl. And so that's how my life went. I went to a Christian school. Um, I was taught a little bit on the piano, but I wasn't really good at it. But that was just my life. And then um, about 1997, my grandmother passed away. And before then, she was diagnosed with cancer. And I remember my fondest memories was she didn't want to tell me because she didn't want me to be sad and to be disappointed in life. So I remember we ended up moving. So I ended up moving from Pensacola to Apopka, Florida. And I would still come see my grandmother on like the summers and stuff. And so I was my grandma's baby. She was supposed to eat certain stuff and she loved oatmeal pies. So I would sneak the oatmeal pies to her. And my granddad would be like, "You're not supposed to do that." Like, but that's what she wants. Um, and her cancer progressed and it got aggressive. But I saw her never give up. Like, she never gave up her faith. She always believed that God would heal her. And so in her last stages, I'll never forget as she was getting hospice was in, she was about to pass away, and everyone was like, she was so quiet. And when I came in, she started like being loud, just talking. And shortly after she passed away. So when my grandmother passed away, I feel like a part of me died with her. Um, and I just got really quiet. I was an introvert. I didn't talk much. My mom would try to get me to talk, and I just went in. I started to struggle with depression. Um, and so, as a kid, so like I'm like 12 years old. And so I just kind of like figured my own way. So as I got into adolescent ages, I did things that A lot of people did like had sex, had boyfriends, those types of things. Um, and one thing just led to another. And so I ended up having my kids. And I have three children. One passed away. And so I had my little boy first, and he's my oldest, and he was my heart. He's 19 now. But during that period when I conceived him, I was just so happy. Like it was just such a joy. And so I had my son, and during that period, he just brought me just as much joy as I brought him. So I'm a young mother. I'm like 18, and I just felt like, hey, it's an opportunity for me to build a good life. So I was able to get my first apartment, and I worked. I've always believed in working. I was instilled into me as a child. So I worked really hard. So I had my own place, getting stable, and then I got pregnant again. So about 6 months after I had my son. So I had twin girls. And at that time, I didn't feel like I was ready to have more kids, but I found out they were twins. So I was like, I have to have them. I've made the decision to go ahead with the pregnancy, and I had two beautiful girls. Um, and during that period, I was still working, and I was able to get my own house, my own car. Um, and so I was in a few relationships, and those relationships just kind of like went sour. And once again, I struggled with down into depression. But this time, I struggled alone because I was an adult and I didn't talk about it. I just figured like I could fix it. Like I work, you get a job, you work, you pay your bills, and whatever challenges that you have the ability to push past those things. So I didn't realize that I was basically a functional um, person that was depressed, right? And so I ended up leaving the job I was at because I wanted more stable income. So not knowing that they had a call out policy that was pretty strict. So just to backtrack, I was like 19, and so I ended up working at McDonald's, and I ended up being like the youngest shift manager. So it was cool, but I was a lot of closes, and I'm like, I want to be at home with my kids. So I chose to make this job career change. And even to this day, I'll think like, man, I should have stayed at McDonald's. But I did, and I wasn't able to come to work. Car broke down, natural things happen. But the call out policy is like you call out for the whole day. Well, I didn't call for the whole day. So I didn't end up making it. So I ended up losing my job. I was so ashamed and I was so prideful that I didn't want to tell my family that I was struggling. Like I had struggled for like months, probably like 6 months. And I just, I was afraid. Like I was afraid to tell my family, like I'm struggling, I need help. I had my boyfriend, he would help watch my kids. And I went to like people I worked with, my friends, and I just figured that I could put myself back together because I always have. And so my boyfriend ended up deciding, he didn't want to be there anymore. So just a chain of events, and it just each disappointment, each situation just brought me deeper and deeper and deeper into a depression to where I was living each day and not knowing that not only was I in a bad situation, but I had put my children in a bad situation. So my utilities had gotten cut off. I had went to a lot of different organizations to try to help me, and some did and some didn't. Some was like, no, we can't, go through my program. And I was like, okay, but we're going to get a job. So I was just with my friends, like her dad did like side jobs, and I was doing like side jobs to get whatever money I could get to just try to get my lights back on, just to try to get my utilities back on. And that particular weekend, I did go with my friends and her dad, and I made some choices that I shouldn't have made, and it led to my one of my daughters passing away. Her name was Mylia, and she was my baby. And so because of it, I was charged with negligent manslaughter, um, and I was arrested. So when I was arrested, I was 21 years old and I hit nationwide news. Like it was just everywhere. It was a lot of opinions, a lot of this, a lot of that. And once again, my family didn't even know what was going on. Like they couldn't talk to me, they didn't know anything. So eventually, and I didn't tell the police anything because I was like, so eventually I just got tired and I told them, and they charged me with what they charged me with. Initially, it was murder. And then it was murder, and then it was aggravated neglect on the other two. Um, and then they dropped it down to manslaughter. And so I was like, I got arrested and I was facing these charges, and my bond was set like at $1 million. Um, which is funny now because I couldn't pay to even get my utilities on, let alone be able to pay to bond myself out, right? So I um I remember at that time I was in a state of shock. Like I know it now, but then I didn't know it. Like I'm young, like I didn't realize the gravity of the situation I was in. Like so it was a lot of heartbreak um with my family, both sides of the family. And so my babies were 18 months and 2 years old at that time. So I'm incarcerated. I'm in Miami County Jail. And at this time, I'm in PC because of the situation. And then, so I'm in there and I'm just like in my room. You know, my pastor came and saw me, and he was the first person that came and saw me. And he tried everything he could to get me out. He talked to the sheriff, talked to everybody, and he couldn't get me out. And he came and saw me, and he told me that he loved me, and he told me that I would be like Joseph. And he was like, wherever you go, God will give you favor. And then I was like, what are you talking about? So I'm going through my process, and all of the officers, they were just so nice to me. Like, they would be like, oh, Miss Woods, you can come out. And I used to just sit and talk to them. And so whatever took its course. And then my judge um, was sentenced me, and he was a kind man. And God truly showed him showed me favor in his eyes. And so he sentenced me to 15 years in prison. And he also sentenced me to the closest facility to home because my family was like, the travel and we'll be able to see her, things like that. And I spent a couple years at Lowell, which is considered like the maximum security prison. And um, I just did my time. And so then I was able to go to Gadsden, which is what kind of changed the trajectory of my life. I went there and I got involved in church. I got involved with the chapel. And it was a volunteer at the time. She was a volunteer. And I remember going into church and I was sitting in the back because I was so ashamed. I was so like, God can't love me. I was a good kid raised up in church, and because of my decisions, like God will never forgive me. So I was sitting back, so I used to sit in the back of the church. And so I was sitting in the back of the church, and this lady, I'm hearing this music, and she's from a different culture. So I'm like, oh, wow, what's this music? And I liked the music. It was very inspirational, it's very empowering. And so I was like, okay, so I'll go back the next Thursday. She was coming again and she was, preaching, she did her message. And like one day I walked up to her and I said, I really like your message. And so she looked at me, and I'll never forget, we had like a glass where the chapel was. It was like a glass. And she would, and so she said, well, why are you so down on yourself? And I remember I turned my head away from her and I started crying. And I was like, that was the first time I ever like really got like super emotional. And she just gave me a hug, and I went on about my life. So like 2 months later, this same lady walks in my dorm. I was in the faith-based dorm. So she walked in my dorm and she began to be my chaplain. And I was like, oh, I know that lady. And so I didn't know that years later, even till today, she would play a big part of mentoring me and teaching me and showing me how to be how to love myself, how to forgive myself, how to walk in prosperity and learn how that my life has purpose. So she actually ended up starting a dance team. And at that time, I really couldn't talk to people. I didn't know how to express how I was feeling. I hadn't dealt with my daughter's passing. Um, and I didn't know how I felt. I knew that I missed my daughter. I knew that there are moments where if I would have a good day, I felt guilty about having a good day because of my situation. And so started dancing. I never danced ever before, like not in the club, not anywhere. So I had two left feet. And we had tried out and we did one song like forever. And I made the team and I struggled like for many months. And um, but my prayer was so simple. I was like, God, I just want you to flow through me. And probably like 8 months later, I ended up doing my first dance solo. And today, it began to be like my love language with God. And I would dance, of course, in church. But there are times where I would just get the boom box and I would go on the back like porch area and I would play a song. And whatever that song meant to me, whatever that song felt like, that's what I would dance. And it would be a way of me and God communicating because He understood what I said and I understood what He was saying. And He would just minister to me. And through that, a lot of brokenness, a lot of things that I was dealing with would shut off my life. So I'm definitely a big proponent of like art therapy, different forms of therapy because they're healing and they're therapeutic. They respect me, and sometimes we'll have conversations. They're like, "Why are you here?" And I tell them, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." Um, so when I left, the day I got out, my family's there, and they don't want to let me go. Like I'm talking to them, I'm talking to the officers for like 30 minutes. I'm already gone. I'm like, my mom's like, hey man, why you taking so long? I was like, oh, I was talking to such and such. She's like, oh man. So when I came home, um, it was a little challenge. It was some challenges. My biggest challenge was because I did so long, I was like an alien. Like I had no credit. So I wanted to go into college. And so when I wanted to enroll in college, my mom had to come and say, yeah, she is who she is. So that was like a little disturbing for me. So I had to grow through that. I had no credit. I had to rebuild, like start from the ground up, small, and rebuild those things. I did have a job within 3 days. So I got a job within 3 days. I had like four job offers, but I had a job within 3 days. And I started off at Dunkin' Donuts and I worked there for about 8 months. And in 8 months, I became the general manager there. And I worked there for 2 years and I went to school and I worked a second job as well. And so I just worked and I went to school, and I think like within a year, year and a half, I had my own car, and then I moved on into my own place. And so I worked there for a while, and then I recently, like a year ago, moved to Auntie Anne's Pretzels, um, and I served at Waffle House, and so I now I'm the area manager of two locations there, and still in school. And so I got to a place where I was doing so great, um, but I was still like bound by shame and bound by my charge and bound by my mistakes because I worked like so hard to like for 4 years and to build my life and to be like to show my children and to prove to myself that I could be a great person, that my past didn't define my future. And I did very great. but there was still always like a place that was hurt, that was still like I didn't get over it, you know. Like I go out to my daughter's grave, and that part of me, it's because I was a mom, you know. So I carried my child for 9 months, and
She'll be right back. And then out. What a message so far. What a story. If you wait on that, yeah, let's come back. What a story. If you have a question that you want to ask, please put it in the comment section. We'll be sure to
oh, I'm sorry, you lost me.
ask.
Hello, I'm so sorry.
You good?
Okay, so
You good? You was
I
talking about visiting. You good? You can go ahead and finish.
okay, thank you. I'm sorry. So I decided that I wanted to work on like my healing. And my way of doing that was to give back. And so I recently started getting plugged in with like different organizations. Like it's one lady that I have a passion with helping and volunteering with a suicide prevention program. And those are some of the things that I've recently got involved in. There's also like a county commissioner that's running in my local community, and so I recently been volunteering and like helping him. And so my hope is to share that I didn't share it in the beginning, but I was facing 90 years in prison. So when it first happened, they wanted to give me 90 years, and then they wanted to give me 60. And so the judge actually gave me a downward departure, and he went below the state's recommendation. And so that's when I saw that this guy saw something in me that nobody else saw in me. And so that means a lot, you know, because I could still be in prison right now. I mean, I could be out on drugs and still wambling in grief. Um, but I want my daughter's life to mean something, to have some type of purpose, because I don't want her life to be in vain. You know, she was a sweet girl, a wonderful little baby, very beautiful, very pretty. But I believe that she wouldn't want me to be sad. She would want me to live my life. But I also want to share that life takes us through many different like pathways and journeys, and it's not so much the challenges, but how we make those opportunities and make something great out of them and to be a blessing to someone else. Um, so I really have a passion for that. And so I really thank you for this opportunity, because I just want to get out and to share my story that just because you go to prison or just because something happens to you, we can always change that and make it into something positive, and you can be a voice for a person that'll never ever say anything, you know? And I feel like that there's so many people that the recidivism rate is extremely high. It's like 77%. And but everybody's not going back to prison. You know, some people are opening businesses, they're working, they're raising their kids. And sometimes it's out of fear. Like they don't want to come out and say, because sensation sells. You know, if it's not something that's bad or that's negative or that will get the, I don't know, the reaction of people, it doesn't really like hit stuff, you know? And so for the longest, you know, I just was afraid, you know, because when you are like arrested or something tragic happens, like I didn't have the opportunity to tell my side or to tell my voice. And so it's like, well, they nobody wanted to hear me in the beginning, so why should I now? I'm just gonna move on. But that doesn't free us. It doesn't empower us. And so that's just like my desire.
So that's great, great. We our prayers are with you, with your daughter, and with you. Just knowing now that God has a plan for it. You talked about God's grace change everything. We was listening to your story. We was hearing it, but somewhere out there, like you just said, someone's is going through the same thing and not knowing what to do. when you talked about your life behind bars, when you talked about that part, share with someone that's in that situation. That how did you develop your faith during that time? What, because you just talked about it, and you talked about that faith, you talked about that strength, you talked about the lady that came in and started you, it became like you meant it, so you started to see that light. Help someone that's listening today, or after this recording. How did your faith develop during the time? What like you said, you didn't think nobody would listen to your story. You didn't think nothing about it. You didn't even really know how at the age. But
Mhm.
now you want that message to be out so that your daughter be present, and your message is that we all make mistakes, like you said. So tell someone about how that faith was developed at that time when you was going through the hardest time with your daughter passing, with going to prison, and like, what do I do?
Yeah, so I grew up naturally, like I said, I grew up in church. And it actually was a situation where, I had my kids out of wedlock. So, but my family being in church the way they were, um, I was made to feel like I was a little bit of a disgrace. So when I was in church, one lady was like, "You can't keep your kids quiet," and like, so I was like, okay. So I go in the waiting area, and in my mind, I said, I'm never coming back to church again. This is it. And the pastor's wife, everybody was like, "Oh, Christian, it's okay." I was like, okay. I smiled, but in my mind, I was like, I'm never coming back. This couple months later, when whatever happened. So when I got to jail, of course, they all give everybody a Bible. So I read John, the book of John, and that was the first time I read it for real. And when I read it, I cried. I mean, like boohoo crying. Because it was the first time, because the book of John really talks about how God's love is for you. And then I realized, like, God doesn't hate me, like, He loves me. And a lot of prayers, like, a lot of my family was praying for me. People I met, people I didn't meet, people I know, people I don't know. And so, when I got there, they have a lot of things like devotionals, and I would feed myself that every morning. It would be like our daily bread, and they'll have something for the day. So I would read it and I would journal about it. And so whatever that scripture or that saying meant to me, I did that. Another thing is I did go to church and I did dance. So I did have people around me that was like-minded. But my biggest thing was prayer and was journaling, because sometimes I would see a quote and it wouldn't technically be the Bible, but it would be spiritual, and I was able to apply that principle like to my life. And I remember I prayed. I was going through it, and I wanted to see my daughter. And my chaplain was like, "Well, have you prayed to God about it?" And I felt like, "No, that's something so stupid. Like, God don't care about that." But I did, and I prayed for a long time. And one day I saw her, and I saw her in her garden, and her hair was long and pretty. She was so cute. I couldn't get to her, like it was a divide, but she smiled. And that's when I knew, like, something that small, God answered my prayer, and that boosted my faith to be able to trust in Him, like, even the more. So, journaling and some type of inspiration to feed your spirit back up, because the prison and just tragedy can be a very lonely place. You feel like nobody understands. Your mistakes and your shoulda, woulda, couldas will eat you up like to your core. And we've, in some capacity, everybody has experienced that. But exercising, I was out there listening to different words and different, they have like radio stations, and I would listen to music because I'm a music person, but I would listen to music and I would listen to inspirational songs, and I would journal what I feel, and I would say affirmations like, I am beautiful, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And I would find a life scripture. And there's some scriptures that I loved, and there's some scriptures I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like one scripture that someone had told me was like, "For I know the plans I have for you," Jeremiah 29:11. And I struggled with that scripture, right? Because I was like, how could God bring something beautiful out of this? Like, how can He know the plans to bless me, for me to have my expected end? And this is my end right now. Like, because we're not talking about a couple years, we're talking about like 13 years. So over a decade. And it's like, well, what's my expected end? And God will take those things. And as long as we continue to develop ourselves, whether it be education, whether it be wellness, whether it be spiritually, arts and crafts, um, whatever that might be, God will take it and make something beautiful into it. I would have never imagined that I would live the life that I live today. You know, um,
Wow, that's great. So you talked about that John, the book of John in the Bible. Once you read that book of John, like you said, it's about God's love. So when you added that up, when you added that decade up, you just talked about, let our listeners know, or someone that may have a loved one that's coming home, what was it like walking out of prison after 13 years? What was that feeling like after being spiritually seeing it, like you said, for real? You read it for real for you. You didn't have to worry about nobody telling you. You didn't have to
mhm.
say, I listened to it on the radio. You didn't have to say, I heard someone talking about it. Tell them what it was like walking out of that prison after 13 years, after facing 99 years, 60 years.
uh, it was, I don't know, it was weird. So, you talk to people and you see some people. I think it's different for everybody depending on their circumstances. But um leading up to it, you get anxious. You like, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. So like that morning, I was up the whole morning. I was up, getting myself together, looking, just my things. A lot of people leave stuff, but I took my Bibles with me. I took my photo albums and a lot of the things that I did while I was there because I didn't want to forget. So I walk out and I see my family. I see my mom and my aunt came and my uncle came. So I was super happy to see them. And I'm like, okay, this is, for real. Like I'm actually leaving. And I don't think it really hit me at first. And so I'm driving. It was just really nice. It was great to finally be out, you know. When I got home, I must be admit my first couple weeks were hard. Not so much. I didn't struggle like, and it's different, because I didn't have a lot of the struggles that people have. Like I didn't struggle with um finding a job. I didn't struggle with those types of things. And that's because I prepared, like, I was preparing like years, like 2 or 3 years before I got out. I was thinking, okay, the first week I get out, I'm going to get my license, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So I already knew, like, bam, 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 bam. And so I tell people, the loved ones, to encourage your loved ones to prepare for these things, right? They do have programs and things like that that helps get your social, your ID and things. So when they leave, they have those things, but it doesn't prepare you for anything. It's a whole big world, and you feel like a little person in this whole big world, and it's scary. And I say that still sometimes. I'm like, it's scary out here because you go from asking someone each day, like, well, can I use the bathroom? And can I have this toilet paper? And can you open the door so I can go out to education? And can I go out to go get something to eat? Can you let me out so I can go? You have to ask someone to do everything. And now you have all these decisions, and you're like, okay, if I do this, it's this, if I do that. And you have to trust and you have to believe that the decision that you're making is the best decision. But for me, I was so adamant about a plan because I didn't have another chance, because my first pop was like, woo! So I was like, I don't have another chance. I have to get it right this chance. But it wasn't as hard as I thought it was. Um, Having a plan definitely is a big thing. But I remember my first like probably 3 months, I everything was I never took I still had the bag and I was still living out of my bag. When I would go to the store, I would buy like multiple things of body wash and toothpaste and deodorant because I was just used to that. When you're there, you have your packages, and so you order multiple so that you have enough to the next package. Um, so those were some of the things, and I remember um, getting up, like we get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, no matter what, I was up at 5 o'clock. Um, I remember sleeping in a ball. Um, I remember my mom thinking I was still like regimented. She said, "So her friends, my daughter's regimented," and that hurt my feelings. I'm not gonna lie, but I guess at that time I was, because she was out here, and you guys, people in society, see things a certain way. And with me coming out of prison, I'm like, well, this is what I do every day. Like, how does that make me regimented? And I realized like everything was to the T. Like, I mean, it was if anything was out, I was like, oh no, 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 we have to put that out. We got to put that back. And so I guess what I would tell the family members is to show grace, to know that just like it's a transition for you learning, your family member again, it's a scary world. And each day, especially in the beginning, they're trying to make the best decisions that they can. Um, but I also feel like that it takes effort, and your family members have to want to change. They have to want better for themselves. They have to have the drive and to know that if you are willing to put one step forward, God will give you many steps, you know?
That's great. Thank you for the family. Thank you for that. You touched on it for that family member that to be there for that family member. Again, let someone know, Kristen, that the question is, what has surprised you most about rebuilding your life? What surprised you most about rebuilding your life? You said you had a job in 3 days, so getting a job didn't surprise you because you got it in 3 days. You got people that's been out here for 13 years and still ain't got a job. So what surprised you most about rebuilding your life?
The relationship that I have with my kids today. What surprised me the most is that children are resilient. Children love, and children are the most forgiving. And being able to pick up the phone and being able to, like, my son works for me. So at my job now, he works for me. And I'm hard on him, but that's because I don't want him to make the same mistakes I made, and I explain it to him. But being able to be in my children's life, being able to teach them being able to, like, they tell their friends, like, my mom is one of the most hardworking people ever. And that blesses my heart, being able to teach them. So the restoration that God restored, like, my children to me, has surprised me.
That's great. That's great. That's great. You said the most important thing. I'm hard on everybody that worked with me from day one. My story is similar to your story. I tell people when I was in prison, I already had me a job coming home. I already had me a
Yeah.
car. I had a plane. So, and you know the people on the outside, like you say, they don't realize it. But as you just touched on that about you hard on your son, for our young Gen Zs that listen to your story, that's going through your story and got a chance, what would you what would you tell someone who believes their past defines their future? Me and you both have a similar story. What would you tell someone who believes what they're doing, they think is right? Explain to them how that don't define your future.
Um, I would say that you have to know who your identity is. Because when I went through a period where I felt like I couldn't have good relationships, I couldn't have friends, because if somebody knew what I went through, they would be like, oh, you know. So I identified my charge with me. And so until I had to realize that I'm not my charge, I had to realize that, you know, that was 15 years of my life. Granted, I'm 38 now. So, but if you look at 38, that was half my life. But now that was only a small piece of who I really was. And so when I look and say, even what the enemy or what people or what the system decided to break me, it didn't break me. And because it didn't break me and I was able to walk out, because there are a lot of people that never make it out of prison, they die in prison. They die in their addictions, like they die in a lot. So when I think of it, like when you know who you are, like who are you? A lot of people like, what do you, not just I got kids, or I used to say, yeah, I was sentenced to 15 years in prison. And one lady said, but who are you? And I had to realize that I'm not my charge. And so when I realized that I'm not my charge, then I could live again.
And that's so important. That piece that you said, when you realize that, and I'm sure you have because you just spoke on it, everything else goes out the window because, like you said, you 38, you get a new chapter. You get another chapter to write. Along with
Hmm.
writing that next chapter, what has God taught you through this mission, through this journey? What has reading, taking all them books home with you, taking all that literature, waking up reading them daily devotions, waking up in that own space and just you in that cell, looking up at the ceiling, looking up at a wall. What has God taught you through this journey of that journey that most people try to hold on to, or try to, as you look at most of our generation now, they try to portray that like they tough, or
Hmm.
portray that like they bad. I wear a shirt sometimes and it says everybody tough until they get a court date.
That's right.
So, because you've been there, you know it, you can relate. I can relate to it when I try to help, or like you doing, try to mentor. That's why I started this real story, real people. I want to go around and get these real stories because
That's
I know
right.
everybody portray that toughness until you get that court date. Everybody portray that toughness, but all the tough people, even in jail, are dead. Those are the
Hmm.
real tough people because they kept going. There's no need of being tough out here because, like you said, once that light hits you and you got an answer, and
Hmm.
nobody is there for you. So help someone know that what God taught you through your journey.
Well, that's a good question. So a couple things. I don't compromise. I don't play with it. I don't I don't play with it. Right. So I don't compromise. I stay focused. Because if I lose focus, then I start to drift. So God taught me about disciplining myself and about focusing. And so I learned that actually at out there. I used to do 5K. So they have like the programs that come into the prison, like go when they come in, and we have a class every Saturday, and you go run, you run, you run. And that taught me mind over matter. That taught me discipline. That taught me to say no to things that might be okay, but is it going to knock me off course? Right. So that was one thing. And the second thing that he taught me was pride cometh before a fall. Right. But humility is the key. Be humble. Like you can be confident in your skills and where you are. Be confident in who you are, but never be prideful. Because if I would have asked for help, if I would have did anything, even went and said, "Hey, listen," went up there, "Listen, I got 3 kids and this is what we got going on." Yeah, my kids probably would have been taken away from me for a period of time, but it wouldn't have been as bad as it was. So I learned not to be prideful. There have been times since I've been out just learning how to manage things. I've had to go to my dad, I've had to go to my mom, I've had to ask people for help, and my auntie, before I got my car, I was doing the flex program to save instead of Ubering to save so I can get back and forth to work and save my money so that I can get a car. I've rode the bus. I've never was too proud to. I rode the bus back and forth to work. I would gladly spend $250 instead of spending $30 until I could get where my goals and where I'm going in life. So God taught me about pride. Pride was a huge thing, and about being humble and being grateful and having gratitude, not thinking that um somebody owes me something, because that's something,
Wow.
another that's another story for another day. But
Yes.
being
Wow.
yeah.
Say that again for our youngsters. Listen to this. Tag someone and tell them to hear this part if you hear nothing else.
Be grateful, be humble. Don't think that people owe you something, because that's a big thing, right? So there are people that get out and they think the society owes them something. And I think that's what it was. Like, I didn't expect anything. Like, I was like, if I ever get a chance, that was the thing. Like, if I ever get a chance to get out, like, I'm gonna show them how to do it.
Hey, that's great. That's great. That bring volume. That's kind of like most people that have stories similar to like we have that know that I'm not compromising. I'm gonna do this my way because I know I done seen it done a lot of other ways, but I'm gonna trust the process. So someone is listening today, Kristen, that want to know how has you took your greatest mistake and become your greatest testimony. How did you take the greatest mistake, and I know it's tough, to become your greatest testimony? You already talked about it when you first start sharing. How do that mistake become your greatest? For there's someone out there now that's on that path, got a court date. Someone out there now get ready to go to the court. Someone out there now is on trial. So they need their loved one to take something back to them to tell them how their mistake can become their greatest testimony.
um that's why I say, like, prayer. I mean, of course we always say prayer, right? um I would say transparency, being able to accept your part, even if it's not the whole thing, right? If you're like, oh, I ain't doing nothing, you have some part to play in it somewhere. Being able to understand your part, being able to heal, because we can never overcome what we never confront, So if I never confront it, if I never say, okay, this is an area, whether it be journaling, whether it be affirmations, whether it be going out, exercising, whatever that looks like to release it, being able to admit your part, because that's when true freedom and true healing comes. And sometimes it doesn't always come in. God doesn't take you out of situations all the time. Sometimes you definitely have to. I didn't get out any early. And I didn't. People say, yeah, you're gonna get out early. I didn't get out any early. So God doesn't always take it from you or deliver you from circumstances. Some people He does. A lot of people He does, but it doesn't happen to everyone. So if God prepares this path for you, being able to say, let me be the best Christian, or let me be the best Michael, or let me be the best Nancy that I possibly can be. So when I walk out, I'm prepared.
Yes, yes. And Kristen, this question here. If you could speak to your 21-year-old self, what would you say back then? Out of all this
Mm.
knowledge you done got, out of all these lessons you done learned, if you could speak to that person 21 years, what would you say now to that person out there that's 21 years old?
You're gonna make me cry. I would tell her, I love you. I would tell her that no matter where you find yourself in life, you have everything inside you to overcome. That's what I would tell her.
Wow, wow. So again, before we close, we want to let you, because people want to know how can they hear your story, how can they get in touch with you, how can they take this so that somewhere someone is going through what you're going through. One thing about these podcast is about a real story. It's about real people. So this is
Mm.
not something that we read in a book, and most people don't get a chance. Like most nowadays, nobody had nobody in their corner. The first thing an older person say is, "Oh, I ain't saying nothing to that child. I don't know what they may do." If they don't hear it, they never gonna know what to do. Like me and you did coming up, we thought we was doing right. We came from
Yeah.
a spiritual family. We came from a family that cared. But everybody got to make a different turn. So if someone was listening, feel that their path had disqualified them from having a meaningful future, like you found out 13 years later, a century later, what would you want them to hear up from your testimony today? After you thought about that 99 years, after you thought about that 60 years, you like you say, you can laugh about it now, and you can
Yeah.
smile,
It
you
wasn't
can
funny
joke
then.
about
It was not funny then. It was not funny at all. Um, I would tell them to fight because I didn't fight for myself when I got sentenced to what I got sentenced to. Um, I remember after I got sentenced, I was like, wow, that was my answer. But it was so much. I didn't fight. I didn't fight for myself. I didn't. God knew what I didn't know because I was young. I was 21. I didn't know anything about the justice system or nothing. Um, but God knew what I didn't know, and He placed people in my life to empower me and to teach me. There's someone that's facing so much time. I would tell them to fight. I would tell them to educate themselves. I would tell the loved one to tell their loved one to go to the law library to educate themselves to see if there's anything that they can do that could make their situation a lot less severe. But I also would tell them to, I also would tell them to be transparent, to own their mistakes, and to build a plan. You know, that's what I would say. If there was anything that would leave me, regardless if you get out or if you get there, a plan. Create a plan.
And you're right about that because when I look back at my situation, it was similar. I got time for somebody else. I had nothing to do with it because I didn't even fight. I was like, well, you can get 20.
Yeah.
You want to take this 3 or you want to try to get the 20. But if I had known what I know now, and a
Hmm.
lot of my aunts and family members were like, boy, you ain't had nothing to do with that. Federal government work a little different. But like
Right.
you said,
Exactly.
like you
Exactly.
said, but when they don't know it, because most people that's listening to the podcast, and most people that listening to it, remember they just dealing with the state. The state is a
Yeah.
whole other level than when you deal with the feds, because
Exactly.
their conviction rate, I tell people, is 99%. So
Yeah.
nobody, like you just said, you got to fight. Nobody's they 99%. When they come
Hmm.
get you, they don't waste a whole lot of money. They done a whole lot of research.
Exactly.
But,
So they know.
but
Hmm.
like you saying, when in my situation, man, you ain't, man, they saying 20. You want me to take this 3 or you want me to play around with that 20?
Hmm.
So we
Exactly.
appreciate you. Is there anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask? If it's anything you wanted again, I mean, about listening to the news. They just had some 14-year-olds. I'm in the DMV. I don't know where this was at. It was on the news. They just had a 15-year-old driving a car with 14 years old in it, and it killed a person. So he's going through what we already know about. So he was 15 driving a car, a stolen
Hmm.
car, and killed someone. So someone's out there. If there's anything that I didn't ask that you can help someone, because that's a mother, that's a
Hmm.
person that's similar to like you, a father, that his 15-year-old son that he thought was outside at the playground or he thought was outside doing something else. Now he
Right.
got to face consequences
Right.
of killing a father that had 5 kids. So can you help someone with something that I may not have shared that you don't want to go through these type of stories?
Yeah. Um. Know where your children are. You know, do your best to know where your kids are. But um, the parent raising kids, it does not come with a manual. It doesn't come with the, you do this, you do that, you do this. It's not like a recipe that you do the right ingredients, you come out with a beautiful cake, right? So even our best decisions can be flawed. So my advice is, when you find yourself in situations, just don't give up on your kids. I just love them, pray for them, let them know, hey, I'm here for you. I can't save you from this situation, but I am here for you. And I think that is what goes far, because for me and you, like, a person could tell me any, like, life is the best teacher ever. And a person could see anything, but when you experience it, and when them doors close behind you and you know you can't, it's a great divide, I can't get out and you can't come in, it's a totally different situation, you know? And a lot of people are struggling in prison. Like, pray for your people, show them that you love them, tell them that you love them, because just like it's bad out here, it's bad in there, almost worse. Like, it's bad.
And you're so right, Chris. I mean, when I talk to these youngsters out here, they think they got it all figured out. I said, I don't live this now. I'm telling you some good stuff.
Yeah, and got the degree.
I'm
I
telling
lived it
you,
and got the degree.
I'm telling you, it's a commissary day. You know what I mean? Your
Not.
visit can come here and be canceled. You cannot get a visit because they're not having visits. This is
Exactly.
life.
They
You don't
lock it
want to have to
down.
live with that.
Exactly. Yeah, they lock it down. And so, but I just reached like the parents to just love, love your children. Don't condone, but you have to be honest with them. Because with my kids, I'm honest with them. I tell them the truth. Like, hey, this is what you need to do. I tell them, hey, anything, we can work through anything. Just don't go to prison.
You like me? I tell them they get one shot. You get one time to call me.
Do
Because
not go to prison.
that one gonna slip up like you just said. You get one kind, because this is not what this is the road. I tell them, my son, you don't want to go down this road. I promise you some good stuff. I know this road too well. It may not work in your favor,
Yes,
but God may come get you later. But you putting your trust in someone else's hand. You putting your trust in someone that may wake up and have a bad day and they take it out
yes,
on you. You don't want to take
yes,
a chance with that. So
yes.
again, we thank you for your story.
Thank
We
you.
thank you for all that you're going to do, all that you continue to do. We thank you for having your son work with you so that you give him that tough love from both sides. I always tell most people, you don't know both sides. You just live on one side. You got to go in the hood sometimes so you can learn the balance, because
Yes,
they live a little different.
yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I hope that someone can take my story and that can know, like, regardless, that there's hope. Every time we wake up and we breathe life in, it's hope, and God's love is insurmountable. Like, people, God doesn't see things how people see things. Like, we see things how we see it, but God sees things totally different, and He gives grace to who He wants, He gives mercy to who He wants, and He controls it all.
You've seen it from your story. He let you know, like you said, when you look back and you say, what, 99, 60? What happened to 10 and 10, 10 and 5? you know. But God
Hmm.
had another plan. Even the lady that came into prison, even the pastor, they was telling you, but like you said at 21, yeah, that sounds good. You ain't facing the judge.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
again, we thank you so much. Stand by. I'm gonna stop the video. We thank you so much, and again,
Thank you.
our prayers are with you on your journey, whatever you're doing. God already got it figured out. He just wanted me to tell you that keep your head up, regardless of what come your way. He still got work for you to do.
Thank you.
Everyone has a story. Every story has purpose. Welcome to the Real Story, Real People podcast, where ordinary people share extraordinary testimonies of God's grace. Each episode feature honest conversations about faith, healing, second chances, and hope that inspires. Hosted by Raymond Matthews, founder of the Water Bucket Gospel. Join us live every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our YouTube page, The Water Bucket Gospel, or on our Facebook page, The Water Bucket Gospel. Real stories, real people, real